All right, welcome in everyone. Ready for another deep dive. Today we're going to New Zealand.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we're going to be looking at specifically the Horowhenua District, and what we're going to be focusing on is senior life in that district. So we've got some local data. We can compare it to national trends, even look at what's going on in the neighboring areas. I think what makes this a really fascinating deep dive is that Horowhenua has a much larger proportion of older residents compared to the rest of the country.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be looking at a number of reports that analyze senior life in Horowhenua. We've also got a bunch of demographic data that we can compare to national statistics, even to the experience of seniors in surrounding areas.
Yeah.
Our mission is to provide a comprehensive understanding of what it's like to be a senior in this particular part of the country,
Mhm.
and hopefully reveal some insights about demographics, healthcare access, community support, all those things, housing, social well-being, all of that good stuff. And then, from that, we can kind of draw some conclusions about broader aging trends and what we can learn from the solutions that they're trying at the local level.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, before we jump into all that, I think it's worth asking, when we say senior citizen in New Zealand, who exactly are we talking about? Is there like a legal definition for that?
Well, no, there isn't a strict legal definition,
Huh.
but the age of 65 is pretty significant.
Okay.
That's generally when people become eligible for things like NZ superannuation,
Yeah.
their national pension, and the Super Gold Card, which provides, discounts and other benefits.
Okay, so it's not legally defined, but that age of 65 is a practical threshold for when a lot of these things kick in. Okay, that makes sense. All right, so let's zoom in on Horowhenua itself. It's located in the Manawatu-Wanganui region. It's north of Wellington. As of June 2022, it had a population of around 37,000. But here's where it gets interesting. The percentage of people in that 37,000, the percentage that are aged 65 and over, is considerably higher than the national average. Like way back in 2013, it was already 23.7% in Horowhenua compared to 14.3% for the whole country. And they project that it could climb above 32% by 2028. So that difference right there is huge. And that's really what we're going to be looking at today as we do this deep dive.
Yeah, it's really remarkable how much higher that is. So we're not just talking about, a community that's slightly ahead of the aging curve. We're talking about a community that's really, considerably ahead of the curve. And that has some pretty big implications for the kinds of services, infrastructure, and support that's needed in the district.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's start digging into some of these numbers. In 2024, there were approximately 8,220 senior citizens in Horowhenua, and that's a 34% increase from 2013, just in that short period of time. In 2023, census data showed that there were 9,141 people aged 65 or older, almost a quarter of the total population, like 24.9% of the population.
And if we break that down by age group, the 2024 figures show that those aged 65 to 69 represented about 6.7% of the total population. The 70 to 74 group was 6.1%. Then 75 to 79-year-olds, 5.8%. And then it kind of starts to drop off as we get into the older ages. 80 to 84 was 3.6%, 85 to 89, 1.8%, and 90 and over was about 1.1%.
Okay, so we see that drop off, and I imagine that has an impact on like what kind of services need to be offered, right?
Exactly. So you've got a large cohort that are in their sort of younger senior years,
Uh-huh.
but that you also have, a significant and growing number of people in the very oldest demographics, which typically require the most intensive care. So that creates a very unique challenge when you think about how to allocate resources.
Yeah, that makes sense. Someone who is 65 or 70 might be thinking about staying active and being socially engaged, whereas if you're in your late 80s and 90s, you're probably thinking more about healthcare and support services.
Absolutely. You're looking at very different needs and priorities depending on where you are in that age spectrum.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so let's compare that to the proportion of seniors in the rest of the country.
Mm.
In 2024, Horowhenua's senior population was 25.2%, compared to 16.7% nationally.
Right.
2023 was really similar, and even back in 2006, Horowhenua was at 20%, and the national average was 12.3%. So this isn't a new thing. This is a long-term trend.
That's really the key point, I think. They've been dealing with and potentially learning from the opportunities and challenges of having a larger proportion of seniors for quite a long time.
Yeah. And what's really fascinating about this is that this is happening all over New Zealand.
That's right.
The entire country is experiencing an aging trend. So in 2018, 15.2% of the population was 65 or older, and they're projecting that that'll go up to 23.1% by 2043. The number of seniors is expected to exceed 1 million by 2028. So the median age is increasing, the birth rate is declining, New Zealand as a whole is getting older. So in a lot of ways, I think Horowhenua is kind of a bellwether. It's kind of a glimpse into what the rest of the country is going to have to deal with.
Yeah, it's almost like a case study in how to adapt to these shifting demographics.
Right, and the lessons they learn along the way could be super valuable for the rest of the country.
Absolutely. The types of infrastructure, services, community support systems that they're developing could be really instructive as New Zealand's population as a whole continues to age.
Okay, so let's talk about the socioeconomic profile of seniors in Horowhenua. About 8.2% identify as Maori, and a significant proportion, 48%, report living with a disability. And the median income for seniors is around $21,000.
So comparing that to some national figures, the median income in 2023 in Horowhenua for the population aged 15 and over was about $31,700. Nationally, it was about $41,500. So you can see that the income levels in Horowhenua tend to be lower across the board. And then the proportion of Maori in Horowhenua's total population has always been higher than the national average.
Right.
Historically, there's also been, maybe a lower educational attainment.
Gotcha.
So you're looking at a community where you can't just offer kind of standard services. They really need to be heavily subsidized,
Yeah.
accessible,
Yeah.
and designed with individuals with lower incomes in mind, and also maybe some mobility challenges as well.
Yeah, so the key takeaway is that it's not just about offering the same services as every place else. It's about tailoring those services to this unique community.
Absolutely. Tailored to their socioeconomic reality.
Gotcha. So it's likely that lower income and the high prevalence of disability are going to have a pretty big impact on the lives and needs of these folks. Affordability, accessibility, those are going to be key issues in Horowhenua.
Definitely. It really underscores how vital things like affordable services, accessible disability support are going to be in this context. If you have lower income, you might not be able to afford private services or participate in activities that have costs. And if there's a higher rate of disability, accessible infrastructure and tailored support services are absolutely essential.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about healthcare services. What's available in Horowhenua?
Okay, so they have the Horowhenua Health Center in Leven, which offers primary care, some hospital services, GPs, radiology, a pharmacy. There's also the Lonsdale Total Care Center in Foxton,
Okay.
which provides rest home care, hospital-level care, dementia care.
Okay.
And then there's also the Horowhenua Masonic Village in Leven, which offers hospital care and what they call care suites.
Gotcha.
Interestingly, as of January 2025, they reported some vacancies in their hospital care beds.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, so it's worth noting that most of those healthcare resources are concentrated in Leven and Foxton.
Makes sense.
And they do provide, a vital foundation of care. But for the more specialized medical stuff, it seems like residents often have to travel outside the district. They do have a health shuttle that goes to Palmerston North Hospital, which is great.
Okay, that's good. That helps.
Yeah. So, you can get to those specialized services, but it does involve travel.
Right, and that can be a barrier, especially for seniors.
Exactly.
All right, so what about specialists? Can folks get access to those in Horowhenua?
So they do have some outreach support. Consultant geriatricians from Palmerston North come to Leven, but often for specialist assessments or specific procedures, you do have to travel to Palmerston North. The Horowhenua Masonic Village does offer some specialized care.
Okay.
They have oxygen therapy, palliative care. They even have dialysis through partnership with Mid-Central Health.
Oh, wow.
So, there's a good level of care available locally, but for the really highly specialized stuff, it does seem like Palmerston North is the place to go.
Gotcha. So it sounds like they have good infrastructure for routine care and even some more complex stuff. But for those highly specialized services, you have to go outside the district.
Yeah, and that's a pretty common pattern in rural areas. Access to specialists can be tough.
Okay, so how does that compare with the national picture for senior healthcare?
So nationally, they have Senior Line, which is a helpline. You can get information and advice. And then they have what's called NSC, which is Needs Assessment and Service Coordination.
What's that?
So NSC essentially assesses an individual's care needs and then helps coordinate the services.
Oh.
So whether it's home care, support at a facility, whatever.
Gotcha. So this is essentially how you get into the system for long-term care.
Exactly. They assess your needs and they figure out what level of support you need, and then they connect you with the right services.
Okay, so that makes sense. What else is available nationally?
Well, home care support is widely available. There are also a lot of regional initiatives, like they have Kamatua Health Hubs in Canterbury, which are specifically for Maori elders.
Okay.
And then the government provides financial assistance for health care for anyone over 65.
Right.
So you've got this national framework that includes organizations like Age Concern NZ. And then they have a specific rural health strategy,
Okay.
which aims to ensure that people in rural communities have equitable access to healthcare.
That makes sense, especially given what we were just talking about with Horowhenua.
Exactly. So they're trying to make sure that everyone has access to the care they need, regardless of where they live.
So it sounds like the national system is pretty comprehensive, but, even with the health shuttle, travel for specialist appointments can still be a real challenge for some seniors in Horowhenua. And we know that nationally there are issues with GP access and waiting times for specialists, so it seems likely that those challenges would be even greater in a more rural area like Horowhenua.
Yeah, absolutely. And that raises the question, how do you bridge that gap?
Right.
Could you have more specialists doing outreach clinics in places like Levin?
Yep.
Could you use telehealth more for certain types of consultations?
Right.
Those are things that could really help reduce the burden of travel, cut down on waiting times. And the rural health strategy is actually designed to address those kinds of disparities, but actually making it work on the ground. That's the hard part.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so let's switch gears and talk about community support services. What's available in Horowhenua?
Oh, there's a really impressive network there. Age Concern Horowhenua seems to be a central hub.
Oh, okay.
They offer just a ton of services. General community support, elder abuse prevention. They have a visiting service, a program called Companions on Pause, which sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Health promotion initiatives, counseling. They even help with things like home maintenance and getting access to affordable broadband through Skinny Jump.
Wow, that's quite a range of services.
It really highlights the vital role that these local organizations play. I mean, they're addressing such a wide variety of needs.
Yeah, and it's not just age concern. The Horowhenua District Council is also really involved. They provide support services, they have an older persons network, they do an annual Age on the Go expo, and they even publish a magazine called Puwai.
And then you've got places like Compassion Housing that do nurse visits and pastoral care for their residents.
Yeah.
And there's also Pacifica Health Services in Horowhenua as well.
Wow, so it sounds like there's a real commitment to supporting seniors in this community.
Yeah, it's a multifaceted approach. Dedicated organizations working alongside the local council, really trying to provide a strong sense of community and support for older residents.
I also noticed that there are a lot of really interesting local initiatives like Age Concerns Aging Well program, which leads to peer-led coffee groups.
Yeah, that sounds great.
They also have this 60 Activities for the Over 60s booklet, which is a joint effort between Age Concern and the council.
Those are the kinds of things that I think are really impressive, really tailored to the local context. Demonstrates a deep understanding of the community's needs, and it's really proactive in promoting well-being and social engagement.
Absolutely. So how do these local services fit into the national framework for senior support?
So nationally, you've got Senior Line, Meals on Wheels, you've got organizations like Age Concern NZ and Grey Power, and then at a government level, you've got the Age-Friendly Aotearoa New Zealand program,
Right.
which is run by the Office for Seniors. And then there's the broader Better Later Life strategy. So it's a really comprehensive national framework. It provides resources, policy guidance, and promotes best practices.
And it sounds like local organizations like Age Concern Horowhenua are really good at leveraging those national structures while also creating their own more community-specific programs.
Exactly. They're taking the national framework and adapting it to the local needs, which is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So are there any gaps in the support system in Horowhenua?
Well, one potential issue is the lower median income we talked about earlier.
Right.
If services are offered at no or low cost, that's great. But what about the cost of transportation to get there?
Yeah.
Or the cost of participating in an activity that has even a small fee? That can still be a barrier.
Right, so affordability is still a major issue.
Absolutely. And transportation, particularly in the rural areas, can also be a problem.
Even with the total mobility scheme.
Even with that.
Wow.
So, exploring things like targeted subsidies or funding to address affordability and maybe some more creative transportation solutions for rural areas, that could really help make the support system even more effective.
Yeah, it sounds like they have a lot of great things going on, but those financial barriers can be really tough to overcome.
Absolutely. And it's not just about offering services. It's about making sure that everyone can access them.
Right. Okay. So let's shift gears again and talk about housing options. What's available in Horowhenua?
Well, you've got places like Spilter's Country Estate Lifestyle Village in Levin. They offer independent living. And then there's the Horowhenua Masonic Village, which we mentioned earlier. They provide more care-focused accommodation. And then you have Compassion Housing, which offers affordable rentals in Levin, Foxton, and Shannon.
Okay.
And then there are a few other retirement villages listed on ElderNet, which is an online resource for senior housing.
Gotcha. So there seems to be a range of options from independent living to more supported care.
Exactly. It pretty much mirrors what's available nationally.
Okay. And do we know anything about home ownership rates in Horowhenua?
Yeah, so back in 2018, the overall homeownership rate was 58.6%.
Okay.
But it was much lower in Levin Central, only 40.8%.
Oh, wow.
And it's important to note that a significant number of seniors live alone, 2,202 in 2018,
Okay.
compared to 3,954 who were living as a couple.
So it sounds like there's a mix of folks who own their homes and those who are renting, and a lot of people living on their own.
Exactly. And that really highlights the importance of having housing options that promote social connection,
Mm.
especially for those who are living alone.
Yeah, that makes sense. So are there any national trends in senior housing that we should be aware of?
Yeah, a few things are happening. One is that people are staying in their own homes longer,
Okay.
often with modifications or with help.
Right.
And then there's also a trend toward downsizing to smaller properties.
Okay.
And then you've got the retirement villages, which offer all sorts of different levels of amenities and care. And then there are also some more culturally specific models emerging, like Kingakamatua and Papakainga, which are for Maori elders. And there's a lot of work being done to increase the availability of affordable senior housing. Like they have Hamaru housing in Auckland.
Okay.
And then there are also supported shared housing options like Abbeyfield NZ. Affordability and suitability, those are big concerns nationwide, as is the increasing number of seniors who are living alone.
Right. So how do those national trends play out in Horowhenua?
Well, I think affordability is even more of a concern in Horowhenua, given the lower median income levels we talked about.
Right.
It's interesting that the Horowhenua District Council actually sold their pensioner housing stock to Compassion Housing.
Oh, wow. Why did they do that?
My guess is that they wanted to make sure that there were more specialized and better resourced housing options available for vulnerable seniors.
Hmm.
Compassion Housing has a lot of experience in providing that kind of housing.
That makes sense. So it sounds like affordability and the suitability of housing are really key issues for seniors in Horowhenua. And it's not just about having a variety of options available. It's about making sure that those options are actually affordable and can meet the needs of residents as they age.
Exactly. And things like accessibility become really important as people get older. You need to make sure that the housing can adapt to changing needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, last but not least, let's talk about social engagement and well-being. What do we know about that for seniors in Horowhenua?
So we don't have as much specific data on this as we do for some of the other topics.
Okay.
But we do know that about 80% of people age 65 and over in the district rate their health is good or excellent.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's a pretty positive indicator.
Yeah.
And the Horowhenua Age-Friendly Community Strategy really prioritizes social connectedness. And the Older Persons Network is also really active in promoting engagement.
Right.
And Age Concern, with their Aging Well program, they're really working hard to combat social isolation.
Okay.
But the fact that over 2,200 seniors live alone, that does raise some concerns.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like there's a strong local awareness of the importance of social well-being. They're putting things in place to support that. But there are still some vulnerabilities, especially for those who live on their own.
Exactly. They're doing good work, but it's an ongoing challenge.
Absolutely. So what does the national data tell us about social engagement and well-being among seniors?
So nationally, seniors have really high rates of volunteering, especially those aged 65 to 74.
Oh, wow.
But loneliness is a problem. It's a big concern, especially for the oldest age groups and for people with lower incomes. And even though most seniors nationally report high levels of life satisfaction, loneliness can really undermine that.
Yeah, I can see how that would be the case.
So it's a bit of a mixed bag nationally. High levels of engagement on the one hand, but real concerns about loneliness on the other.
And how do you think those national trends might be playing out in Horowhenua specifically?
Well, the fact that there's such a high proportion of older people in Horowhenua, that could actually be a good thing.
How so?
Well, it means there's more opportunity for peer support, social interaction.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's like a built-in community.
Exactly. But the rural nature of the district can also lead to isolation, especially for people with mobility issues or limited access to transportation. And then the lower median income, again, that comes into play because it can make it harder for some people to participate in activities that have costs associated with them.
Right, so there are definitely some challenges, but also some potential benefits. And it sounds like those local initiatives like the age-friendly community strategy and the older persons network are really important in trying to address those challenges.
Absolutely. Those are real assets. The challenge is to keep building on those strengths, address those barriers around transportation and affordability, and ultimately make sure that all seniors in Horowhenua have the opportunity to stay connected and enjoy a good quality of life.
Okay, so to sum up our deep dive today, the senior experience in Horowhenua is unique. They have a much higher concentration of older people compared to the rest of the country. They rely on outside services for specialized health care, but they have a very strong local support network.
That's right.
With age concern and the district council really stepping up to the plate, housing affordability is a key concern. And while they're doing a lot to promote social well-being, there's always the potential for isolation, especially for those who are living alone.
Yeah, I think that's a great summary. The key takeaway is that this is a community that's very focused on its older residents. They have a lot of strengths, but they also have some unique challenges, particularly around healthcare access and affordable housing.
All right, so for you listening at home, what are the key takeaways? Well, the high number of seniors in Horowhenua provides a really interesting look into the challenges and opportunities of aging. We've seen how strong local support systems can help address those challenges, especially in a community that's facing a more rapid aging trend than the rest of the country.
And it really makes you think, could the community-driven initiatives we've seen in Horowhenua be models for other areas?
Yeah.
Especially as the population ages. And on a more personal level, what can each of us do to create more age-friendly communities where we live?
That's a great question.
It's about recognizing that these challenges are coming everywhere, and it's going to take all of us working together to create communities that support people of all ages.
Well said.
Yeah.
All right, folks, that's our deep dive for today. We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic. Until then, take care.
It's all